Have you ever felt like there's a deeper rhythm to the universe? A forgotten blueprint for existence that just makes sense? What if the very fabric of time, the stories of creation, and even the fundamental laws that govern us were far more intricate, more divinely structured than we've ever been told? Imagine stumbling upon ancient wisdom that whispers of a lost cosmic calendar, angelic overseers, and hidden covenants. Today, we're not just discussing history. We're peeling back layers of untold truth that might redefine your understanding of God's grand design. You think you know the Bible? Think again. What if centuries of tradition have inadvertently obscured vital chapters, tales of patriarchs, and even divine decrees that were once considered essential? The Book of Jubilees, a text revered in some ancient traditions yet largely absent from mainstream Christianity, claims to hold these missing pieces. But here's the burning question. Why was this profound book, often called Little Genesis, set aside? Why were its 50 chapters deemed too controversial, too radical for the common reader? Join us as we journey into the heart of this ancient mystery. Could it be that the very rhythm of our days, weeks, and years is out of sync with the divine pulse established at creation? What if the calendar most of the world operates by is, according to an ancient text, fundamentally flawed? The Book of Jubilees doesn't just offer captivating narratives, it challenges our very perception of time, insisting on a sacred structure ordained by God and meticulously upheld by celestial beings. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about time, divine law, and the cosmic ballet orchestrated from the dawn of existence. The journey into the Book of Jubilees begins, much like Genesis, with the creation of the world. Yet, it paints a far more expansive and detailed portrait. Jubilees reveals that God's act of creation wasn't merely about bringing life into being. It was about meticulously weaving the very threads of time into existence, aligning it with His perfect, divine order. This is where the profound concept of sacred time takes root. It's a stark departure from the conventional calendars we're accustomed to, introducing a precise solar calendar. This calendar, unlike our own, is said to be overseen by heavenly angels, who diligently govern the vast cosmic cycles of the universe. This isn't a mere suggestion about how to count days. It's a divine mandate for living in perfect synchronicity with God's will, a rhythm meant to bring humanity into perfect harmony with the celestial spheres. Jubilees powerfully asserts that humanity was originally intended to live by this divine calendar, a system comprising precisely 364 days. This year is thoughtfully structured into 4 distinct seasons, each containing exactly 91 days. This meticulous arrangement ensures that all sacred days, from the weekly Sabbath to annual festivals, perpetually fall on their divinely appointed dates. It describes a flawless, elegant system, but one that, lamentably, the greater part of the world has long since forgotten. Before the very formation of our world, Jubilees tells us, angels were brought into existence on the first day of creation. These celestial beings are not passive observers. They play an absolutely critical role in the harmonious governance of the universe. This includes their crucial task of regulating time and seasons, ensuring that the cosmic clock ticks precisely as God intended. The Book of Jubilees unveils that God assigned these angels specific and intricate duties. Some are said to oversee natural phenomena, such as the majestic movements of the sun, moon, and stars across the heavens. Others serve as vital messengers of God's will and as diligent guardians of His divine laws. This concept of angels guiding celestial movements resonates with whispers from other ancient texts, but Jubilees particularly emphasizes how these angelic beings are integral to maintaining the universal order, guaranteeing that every celestial body adheres to its divinely ordained path. As Jubilees 2-9 states, "For God ordained that the sun should keep its course according to the divisions of the seasons." These powerful angels don't simply watch over humanity. They actively control the very fabric of time itself. The text warns us that when humans deviate from God's sacred time, the inevitable result is chaos and disorder, a powerful theme that underpins much of the Book of Jubilees narrative. One of the most thought-provoking elements within the Book of Jubilees is its unwavering insistence that the world ought to adhere to a solar calendar, in stark contrast to the lunar calendar that many ancient cultures, including segments of the Israelites, eventually adopted. According to Jubilees, the solar calendar is not merely a preference. It is the only correct method to measure time because it aligns flawlessly with God's perfect divine order. The book elaborates, detailing a solar year of 364 days, meticulously divided into 52 perfect weeks. Each season, spring, summer, fall, and winter, contains precisely 13 weeks, or 91 days. This ingenious system ensures that the Sabbath and all other sacred festivals are consistently observed on their correct, appointed days each year. This specific solar calendar bears an astonishing resemblance to the Ethiopian calendar, which, remarkably, is still in use today by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. The Ethiopian year, for instance, comprises 13 months, 12 months of 30 days, plus an additional short month called Pagum, consisting of 5 or 6 days to complete the year. Could this be a living echo of the sacred time described in Jubilees, one of the few modern systems that still reflects the divinely ordained calendar? In stark contrast, the lunar calendar, which found widespread adoption in the ancient world, including among many Israelite factions, is depicted in Jubilees as a corruption of this sacred divine order. The lunar calendar's inherent irregularity causes months and festivals to drift over time. Jubilees issues a stern warning that this deviation from the precise solar calendar inevitably leads to spiritual disorder and disharmony. It proclaims, "There will be those who will surely make observations of the moon, but they will disturb the seasons and make an abominable day, the day of testimony." Jubilees 6:37. For Jubilees, following the lunar calendar is not simply a trivial error. It is an act of profound disobedience to God's explicit will. The book strongly suggests that by returning to the pure, uncorrupted solar calendar, humanity can re-establish its alignment with the divine rhythm set in motion at the very genesis of the world. The Book of Jubilees powerfully reaffirms the traditional 6-day creation narrative found in Genesis, yet it plunges into much greater detail concerning the first Sabbath. According to Jubilees, God did not merely rest on the seventh day. He consecrated it as a divine institution, an eternal, unchanging law bestowed upon both humans and angels. The Sabbath is presented as the very bedrock of time, a sacred day set apart at the dawn of creation and intended for perpetual observance. This profound notion of the Sabbath as a cosmic principle is central to Jubilees. It not only governs the weekly cycle but also intricately weaves into the grander tapestry of time, including the pivotal Jubilee cycles of 49 years. These cycles are not just arbitrary periods. They are designed to repeatedly bring the entire world back into perfect harmony with God's order, offering a sacred period of rest, release, and renewal for the land, its people, and even the angelic realm. As stated in Jubilees 2:1, "For he sanctified the seventh day, and blessed it for all times as a sign of holiness for all his works." This profound emphasis on the Sabbath as an eternal, cosmic law vividly illustrates how Jubilees transcends a mere retelling of the Genesis story. It actively reveals the hidden, deeper significance behind the very cycles of time that govern all of creation. Jubilees elaborates on the creation of Adam, who, as in Genesis, was formed on the sixth day. However, it introduces a captivating new dimension to his story. After Adam's creation, God immediately bestowed upon him specific commandments. These initial laws, given right from the beginning, encompass the observance of the Sabbath, intricate purity laws, and foundational rules concerning marriage and worship. Crucially, These laws were not delivered directly by God alone, but were mediated by angels. Adam and his descendants were expected to faithfully follow them as an intrinsic part of the covenant God established with humanity. While Genesis touches on God's direct interactions with Adam, Jubilees introduces these angelic beings, particularly those known as the angels of the presence, as vital mediators who meticulously taught Adam how to uphold God's commandments. These angels ensured that Adam and Eve fully comprehended the laws of holiness, the principles of sacrifice, and the foundations of moral conduct. Jubilees 3:1-2 even details how, on the 6th day of the 2nd week, we brought according to the word of God to Adam all the beasts and all the cattle and all the birds and everything that moves on the earth and everything that moves in the water according to their kinds. This consistent angelic interaction profoundly reinforced the idea that God's law is not a mere human construct, but an integral part of the heavenly order. The angels instructed Adam that he must observe God's laws as an eternal covenant, just as they themselves observe these very same laws in the heavenly realm. This raises a profound question. Could it be that God's laws, passed down through angels, were given to humanity long before Moses ever received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai? And what might we uncover if we were to delve deeper into these ancient commandments, originating from the earliest days of creation? After the fall of Adam and Eve, Jubilees provides fresh insights into the poignant story of their children, Cain and Abel. While Genesis briefly recounts Cain's murder of Abel, Jubilees adds compelling additional details about the profound events that unfolded afterward. Cain's act is depicted as the very first major breach of God's law, a devastating sin that reverberates with spiritual consequences for all of humanity. But even as Cain is cast out, Jubilees powerfully emphasizes that the righteous lineage of humanity continues unbroken through Seth, Adam's third son. In Jubilees, Seth is portrayed as a beacon of righteousness, meticulously taught to follow the divine laws handed down by the angels. This crucial detail sets the stage for future descendants, including Noah, to faithfully carry on the sacred covenant with God. The narrative of Noah and the Great Flood, though familiar from Genesis, is enriched by additional revelations in the Book of Jubilees concerning events both before and after the deluge. In Jubilees, the focus extends beyond Noah's mere survival. It illuminates the profound covenant God establishes with him afterward. This covenant powerfully emphasizes the enduring importance of purity, righteousness, and the diligent observance of God's laws. Before the flood, Jubilees delves more deeply into the pervasive corruption of the earth, particularly shining a light on the Nephilim, the enigmatic offspring of fallen angels and human women. While Genesis 6:1-4 offers a brief mention of the Nephilim, Jubilees provides considerably more context, illustrating how these towering giants contributed immensely to the rampant wickedness that ultimately compelled God to cleanse the earth with the flood. Jubilees 5:2 poignantly describes this decay. And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its way like men and cattle, and beasts and birds and everything that walks on the earth. All of them corrupted their ways and their orders, and they began to devour each other. This profound moral decay, according to Jubilees, wasn't solely attributable to human sin. It was also significantly exacerbated by the insidious influence of fallen angels, who introduced forbidden knowledge and profoundly corrupted the natural order. God's response is swift and decisive. He sends the flood to utterly wipe out this deep corruption, but, in his boundless mercy, he preserves Noah and his family, precisely because of their unwavering righteousness. After the flood subsides, Jubilees reveals that God didn't merely promise never to inundate the earth again. He also established a profound new covenant with Noah. This covenant included specific, vital laws of purity and sacrifice. These laws, which would later be formalized and passed down to the Israelites, were meticulously designed to help humanity maintain holiness and rigorously avoid the corruption that had precipitated the devastating flood. A key and compelling detail in Jubilees is that Noah was expressly instructed to observe the Sabbath and to diligently follow the same laws concerning sacrifice and purity that had been given to Adam. This covenant thus marked not just a new beginning for humanity, but also powerfully emphasized the enduring importance of remaining obedient to God's laws to avert any further divine judgment. The laws of sacrifice, which would later become foundational to the Mosaic Law, were already being faithfully observed by Noah as an integral part of this profound covenant. These laws included precise instructions on how to offer burnt offerings to God and how to maintain purity in both body and spirit. In Genesis 12, we are introduced to Abraham as God calls him to leave his homeland and journey to Canaan. However, Jubilees transports us even further back into Abraham's formative youth, adding an entirely new and compelling dimension to his well-known story. According to Jubilees, Abraham grew up in a family deeply entrenched in idolatry. His father, Terah, was a worshiper of false gods. While this detail is absent from Genesis, Jubilees paints a vivid and dramatic picture of a young Abraham, even then, boldly rejecting the pagan practices surrounding him and choosing instead to follow the one true God. Jubilees 11:16-17 recounts, "And he said, 'My father, tell me, what is this idol you worship?' And Abraham saw that it was an image of stone, and Abraham burned them before the eyes of all and fled into the wilderness." While Genesis rightly focuses on Abraham's obedience to God's call to depart his home, Jubilees portrays Abraham as a revolutionary figure, fearlessly destroying the idols within his father's very house and making a courageous stand against the rampant idolatry of his era. This audacious act of spiritual rebellion powerfully sets the stage for Abraham's later monumental role as the revered father of the chosen people, a lineage destined to reject pagan practices and faithfully follow the immutable laws of God. One of the most striking distinctions between Genesis and the Book of Jubilees is the profound idea that Abraham diligently followed divine laws long before Moses was ever born. In Genesis, there's no specific mention of Abraham being given laws beyond the covenant of circumcision in Genesis 17. However, Jubilees presents Abraham as someone who already faithfully observed the Sabbath, meticulously performed sacrifices, and adhered to many other laws typically associated with the later Mosaic Law. According to Jubilees, these laws were not newly invented during the time of Moses. Rather, they were timeless precepts, passed down directly from the angels to the patriarchs, commencing with Adam himself. Abraham, it claims, received these sacred commandments from angels and was fully expected to follow them as an integral part of his covenant relationship with God. Jubilees 12:25 confirms this, stating, "And he was taught by the angels concerning the things written in the tablets of heaven." Unlike Genesis, where Abraham's actions are primarily viewed as aspects of his personal journey of faith, Jubilees presents him as a pivotal figure within a much grander cosmic plan. He is guided by angels, and the laws he observes are intrinsically part of a vast divine order that governs both heaven and earth. These laws include the sacred Sabbath and various purity regulations that Moses would later formalize in explicit detail. The covenant of circumcision is one of the most pivotal moments in Abraham's narrative in Genesis 17. Here, God instructs Abraham to circumcise himself and all the males in his household as an everlasting sign of the covenant. But Jubilees delves even deeper, revealing that this was not merely a symbolic act. It was an integral part of a cosmic law, meticulously inscribed on the very heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, circumcision was more than just a mark for Abraham's descendants. It was a divine law that had existed since the dawn of creation. This profound covenant, it explains, was indelibly written on the heavenly tablets, which are presented as God's ultimate blueprint for creation, containing all the immutable laws that govern both angels and humans. Jubilees 15:25 powerfully states, "And this law is for all the generations forever, And there is no circumcision of the days, and no passing over 1 day out of the 8 days, for it is an eternal ordinance ordained and written on the heavenly tablets. While Genesis focuses on Abraham's obedience to God's direct command, Jubilees portrays this act as a profound alignment with a much larger divine order. Circumcision, in this expanded view, is not just a physical sign. It's a tangible way of bringing oneself into perfect harmony with the cosmic laws that govern the entire universe. The binding of Isaac, famously known as the Akedah, stands as one of the most powerful and testing moments in Genesis. Genesis 22:1, -19. It describes God's ultimate test of Abraham's faith by commanding him to sacrifice his beloved son, Isaac. Jubilees retells this profound story, but with compelling additional layers of meaning. In Jubilees, this test is not merely a private trial between Abraham and God. It is intricately woven into a larger cosmic spiritual warfare. According to Jubilees, the angel Mastema, a figure frequently associated with Satan, is the one who proposes this ultimate test to God, holding out hope that Abraham will utterly fail. Mastema, in this narrative, represents the pervasive forces of evil, relentlessly seeking to undermine the righteous. The Book of Jubilees further adds that angels directly intervened during the binding, and God permitted the test to irrefutably demonstrate that Abraham's faith was far greater than any temptation of evil. Jubilees 18:10 records, "And I stood before him, and before the prince of the Mastema, and the Lord said, Command him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears the Lord." This rendition of the story in Jubilees introduces an entirely new depth of spiritual significance. It's not simply a test of Abraham's personal obedience. It's an integral part of the grand cosmic battle between good and evil. Mastema desperately attempts to lead Abraham into failure, but God's timely and powerful intervention unequivocally demonstrates that unwavering faithfulness will always triumph over evil. While Genesis primarily focuses on Abraham's personal trial, in Jubilees, it becomes a crucial piece of a much larger spiritual narrative, actively involving angelic forces and the timeless struggle between good and evil. In Genesis 25-23, we learn that even before Jacob and Esau were born, God revealed to their mother, Rebekah, that the two brothers would eventually become the heads of two distinct nations, and, notably, that the elder, Esau, would serve the younger, Jacob. Jubilees expands significantly on this prophecy, emphasizing that this was far more than a mere family feud. It was an integral part of a cosmic design, a preordained plan in which Jacob was always destined to inherit the blessing and perpetuate the righteous lineage that began with Abraham. Jubilees introduces a powerful layer of predestination, revealing that Jacob was chosen from birth to carry on the sacred covenant, while Esau, conversely, was destined to stray from God's divine plan. The book even notes that Isaac and Rebekah were granted divine knowledge concerning Esau's rebellious nature and the future opposition his descendants would pose to Israel. As Jubilees 19:13 quotes, mirroring Genesis 25-23, "And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations shall be divided from your womb, and 1 nation shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger." In Genesis, we witness this struggle unfold through Jacob's cunning and Esau's impulsiveness. But Jubilees clarifies that Jacob was always meant to inherit the birthright, and that his actions, even if deceptive, were ultimately part of fulfilling a preordained divine plan. One of the key distinctions in Jubilees is its portrayal of Esau as far more than just a brother who tragically loses his birthright. Jubilees emphasizes that Esau represents an entire lineage of rebellion against God's chosen people. His descendants, the Edomites, are depicted as a nation that would consistently rise in opposition to Israel, thereby fulfilling the ancient prophecy that the elder would serve the younger. While Genesis briefly mentions the hostility between Esau and Jacob after the birthright and blessing incidents, Genesis 27-41, Jubilees significantly expands on this theme, showing how Esau's descendants would evolve into a nation that directly opposes Jacob's line, the future Israelites. This antagonism becomes part of the larger cosmic conflict that Jubilees frequently underscores, the enduring struggle between righteousness, Jacob, Israel, and rebellion, Esau, Edom. Jubilees 37:1 states, "And Esau took his wives and his sons and all that he had, and he went up to the hill country of Seir and lived there. And Esau became a nation, and they oppressed Jacob's descendants." This clearly reflects Genesis 36:8, where Esau, that is Edom, settled in the hill country of Seir. Jubilees unequivocally states that Esau's rebellion was not merely personal but national, with his descendants becoming the Edomites who would engage in numerous conflicts with the Israelites, reflecting the ongoing spiritual battle that originated with their forefathers. One of the most profound moments in Jacob's life is when he receives the pivotal blessing from his father Isaac, Genesis 27. This blessing ensures that Jacob will become the revered father of the 12 tribes of Israel. However, Jubilees transcends this, emphasizing that Jacob was given not merely a blessing, but also a crucial continuation of the divine laws that had been faithfully passed down from Abraham. According to Jubilees, after Jacob receives this blessing, God and the angels meticulously reveal to him the specific laws that he and his descendants must rigorously follow. These include the diligent observance of the Sabbath, various purity laws, and the sacred calendar, laws that would later be formalized as the Mosaic Law. Jacob is powerfully portrayed as the dedicated keeper of these laws, entrusted with the sacred duty of ensuring that his descendants, the future Israelites, faithfully adhere to them as an integral part of their covenant relationship with God. Jubilees 27-23, echoing Genesis 28-12-15 recounts, "And the Lord appeared to him by night and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon you are sleeping I give to you, and your seed shall be as the stars of heaven." The vision of the latter and God's promise to Jacob in Jubilees demonstrates that the laws Jacob receives are an intrinsic part of the cosmic order that governs both heaven and earth. This profound emphasis on Jacob as the inheritor of divine law elevates his role far beyond simply receiving a birthright. He becomes the solemn custodian of God's eternal commandments, inextricably linking him to the heavenly tablets mentioned earlier in Jubilees. Jubilees doesn't merely stop at the personal rivalry between Jacob and Esau. It expands this conflict into a sweeping prophetic vision of the enduring struggle between their respective descendants. The book strongly suggests that the nations arising from Esau will perpetually oppose Jacob's descendants, the Israelites, throughout recorded history. This transcends the initial personal feud between two brothers and directly connects to the profound idea of a spiritual battle between righteousness, Jacob, Israel, and rebellion, Esau, Edom. In Jubilees, this prophetic struggle is not confined to mere territorial conflict. It's an integral part of the grander cosmic war between the forces of good and evil. Esau's lineage, in this perspective, represents nations that will become direct adversaries of God's chosen people. And this pervasive tension continues throughout biblical history. This spiritual opposition between Israel and the descendants of Esau plays a pivotal role in Jubilees' apocalyptic vision, directly linking the conflict to the anticipated end times. Jubilees 45-3, resonating with Genesis 33-16, states, "And Jacob and his sons came down into Egypt, to Joseph and Esau's sons, remained in the land of Edom, and from that day the enmity between the nations remained." This vision of an ongoing spiritual struggle powerfully reflects the broader themes of Jubilees, where the stories of the patriarchs are viewed as integral to a larger cosmic planon that encompasses not only the family of Abraham, but also the destinies of entire nations and the ultimate, conclusive battle between good and evil. In Genesis, we witness the birth of Jacob's 12 sons, through his wives Leah and Rachel, and their maidservants. These 12 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin eventually become the venerable heads of the tribes of Israel. However, Jubilees adds a profound layer of divine order to the births of these sons, revealing that their arrival was not merely the result of human relationships, but an integral part of a predetermined plan meticulously set by God. According to Jubilees, the precise timing and sequence of these births were divinely ordained to align perfectly with the sacred cosmic calendar. The book emphasizes that each son was born according to this divine schedule, making their births a crucial part of the larger cosmic plan. Jubilees 28-12 declares, "And Jacob's wives and maidservants gave birth to his 12 sons, each according to the time set by the Lord, and their destinies were written on the heavenly tablets." While Genesis 29-31-3034 focuses on the narrative events surrounding the births of these sons, Jubilees powerfully stresses that their births had been meticulously inscribed in the heavenly tablets, thus reinforcing the profound idea that the 12 tribes were a predestined part of God's intricate plan for the entire world. One of the significant moments in Genesis is the story of Reuben, Jacob's elder son, who tragically loses his status as the firstborn after committing a grave sin. Genesis 35-22. Jubilees significantly expands on this event, highlighting its profound spiritual consequences and offering a clear explanation for why Judah and Levi subsequently rise to prominence in his place. In Jubilees, Reuben's sin is framed not merely as a personal failing, but as a direct violation of the divine laws that had been established long before his actions. His transgression is viewed as a spiritual act that disqualifies him from the sacred role of leading the tribes. This pivotal event paves the way for Judah, the fourth son, to emerge as the designated tribal leader, and for Levi to assume the revered role of the priesthood, both of which are depicted as integral to the divine order preordained by God. Jubilees 33-10 asserts, "Because of his sin the firstborn Reuben was not reckoned in the inheritance, but Judah was chosen as the prince over his brothers, and Levi for the priesthood forever." While Genesis 49-3-4 briefly mentions Reuben's disqualification, Jubilees places a much stronger emphasis on how this event perfectly aligns with the cosmic plan. Judah's ascent is presented as part of God's eternal law, and Levi is specifically set apart for the priesthood, inextricably connecting their destinies to the larger spiritual framework that governs Israel's future. In the Bible, the tribe of Levi is distinctly set apart for the priesthood, with Moses and Aaron themselves descending from this tribe, Exodus 28. However, in Jubilees, the role of Levi as the priestly tribe is framed as an eternal mandate. The book powerfully emphasizes that Levi's priesthood was not merely a matter of tribal duty or historical circumstance. It was established on the heavenly tablets long before the Levitical priesthood was formally instituted under Moses. According to Jubilees, Levi was personally chosen by God to be the spiritual leader of the tribes, bearing the profound responsibility for ensuring that the divine laws were meticulously observed. His priestly role is intricately described as an essential part of the cosmic order, and he is bestowed with unique responsibilities that intrinsically connect heaven and earth. Jubilees 32-17 states, "And Levi was set apart for the priesthood for forever, to offer sacrifices and to mediate between the people and the Lord, for it was ordained on the heavenly tablets." While Genesis and Exodus focus on the Levitical priesthood during Moses' time, Jubilees underscores that Levi's role was an inherent part of God's plan from the very beginning. This elevates Levi's priesthood from a mere response to historical events to an essential component of the cosmic order that predates the events at Mount Sinai. In Genesis, Jacob's 12 sons become the heads of the 12 tribes, and their journeys unfold as they eventually settle in the Promised Land. But in Jubilees, these tribes are not merely inheritors of land. They are profoundly portrayed as vigilant guardians of God's law, specifically tasked with upholding the divine commandments passed down through Abraham and Isaac. According to Jubilees, each tribe carries a distinct and specific spiritual responsibility and is expected to meticulously follow the laws inscribed on the heavenly tablets. The book emphasizes that the 12 tribes were chosen not just to possess the land, but to serve as diligent stewards of God's commandments, ensuring that God's laws are faithfully observed by all generations. Jubilees 29-6 proclaims, "And the Lord said unto Jacob, These are the laws for your sons and their descendants forever written on the heavenly tablets, that they may walk in them and live." While Genesis 49 details Jacob's blessings to his sons and their future, Jubilees adds the crucial detail that they were also entrusted with ensuring that God's laws were faithfully transmitted to future generations. Each tribe, therefore, plays a cosmic role in preserving the divine order, inextricably linking their actions to the spiritual destiny of Israel. In Genesis, Joseph's brothers, driven by intense jealousy over their father's favoritism, sell him into slavery. Genesis 37. However, Jubilees takes this pivotal event and frames it in terms of profound cosmic consequences. According to Jubilees, the brothers' act of betrayal is far more than a mere family dispute. It's a grave transgression against the divine order, and their guilt extends far beyond what is simply depicted in Genesis. In Jubilees, the act of selling Joseph is explicitly described as a colossal sin against God's heavenly law, and the brothers are solemnly warned that they will face severe divine punishment for their actions unless they genuinely repent. This is a significant distinction from Genesis, where the focus leans more towards the brothers' personal jealousy and remorse. In Jubilees, the brothers' actions carry immense cosmic implications. Their betrayal disrupts the divine plan and places them squarely under God's judgment. Jubilees 34-4-9 declares, "And his brothers sold Joseph into slavery, and their sin was recorded on the heavenly tablets. For they had transgressed the eternal laws, and it was decreed that their descendants would suffer until they repented for their great sin." This powerful emphasis on the heavenly tablets makes their sin an intrinsic part of a larger cosmic order, directly linking the brothers' actions to the future suffering of Israel under Egyptian bondage. Their betrayal, therefore, not only affects their immediate family, but sets the stage for God's grand plan to redeem the nation of Israel through the Exodus, an event that was foretold in the heavenly realm. In Genesis, Joseph's remarkable rise to power in Egypt is portrayed as a result of his extraordinary wisdom and his uncanny ability to interpret dreams. Genesis 41. However, Jubilees expands on this narrative by revealing that Joseph's ascent was an integral part of a preordained divine plan, meticulously inscribed on the heavenly tablets. His extraordinary success in Egypt wasn't merely due to his exceptional abilities. It was because God had preordained his crucial role as a savior for the Israelites. Jubilees emphasizes that Joseph's rise to power was a pivotal component of the heavenly design, specifically intended to create the precise circumstances that would ultimately lead to the Exodus. It was Joseph's undeniable destiny to bring his family to Egypt, where they would eventually face enslavement and then, miraculously, be delivered through God's divine intervention. Jubilees 42-2 states, "And it was written on the heavenly tablets that Joseph would rule over Egypt, and through him the sons of Israel would be saved from famine, but they would also be bound in Egypt for a time." In this way, Joseph's entire life is depicted as a cosmic event, with his ascent to power serving a much grander purpose within God's overarching plan for Israel's deliverance. Jubilees directly connects Joseph's success to the heavenly order, powerfully demonstrating that it wasn't just a stroke of luck or human ingenuity. It was, in fact, divinely ordained. One of the most intriguing additions in Jubilees is the significant involvement of angels in Joseph's life. While Genesis portrays Joseph as having a close, direct relationship with God through his prophetic dreams, Jubilees goes further by introducing the active role of angels in guiding and protecting Joseph throughout his complex journey. Jubilees describes how angels were specifically dispatched by God to diligently watch over Joseph from the very moment he was tragically sold into slavery, ensuring that he would unfailingly fulfill his divine destiny in Egypt. These angels intervened at critical junctures in Joseph's life, shielding him from harm and ensuring that he remained steadfastly faithful to God. Jubilees 34-21 states, "And the Lord sent his angels to guard Joseph on his journey to Egypt, that he might not perish, for his life was precious in the eyes of the Lord, and his path had been written in the heavenly tablets." This detail regarding the angels' involvement adds a profound layer of spiritual protection to Joseph's story that is not explicitly present in Genesis. It reveals that Joseph's remarkable journey was not merely a series of fortunate coincidences. His path was meticulously orchestrated by God, with angels ensuring that he would rise to power and ultimately save his family. One of the most significant differences between Genesis and Jubilees is how Joseph's life is intrinsically linked to the Exodus. In Genesis, Joseph's role effectively concludes with his family settling in Egypt, but in Jubilees, his life is powerfully portrayed as prophetic, foreshadowing the eventual enslavement and subsequent miraculous deliverance of the Israelites. According to Jubilees, Joseph's rise to power in Egypt was not solely about rescuing his family from famine. It was also about fulfilling a profound prophecy that would ultimately lead to the Exodus. Jubilees explains that Joseph was fully aware of the future bondage of his descendants and played an active role in preparing them for their eventual deliverance. Joseph's words in Jubilees 46-9 resonate with this. "And Joseph said to his brothers, 'I will die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Fear not, for these things have been written and sealed on the heavenly tablets.'" This powerful prophetic element is not as prominent in Genesis, where Joseph's death is depicted as the narrative's conclusion. In Jubilees, however, Joseph's death is viewed as a crucial transition, the beginning of Israel's enslavement, but also a prophetic promise that they would ultimately be delivered from Egypt. This directly ties Joseph's life into the grand cosmic plan of redemption, which would find its ultimate fulfillment through the Exodus. In the Book of Genesis, Israel's period of enslavement commences when a new Pharaoh ascends to power, one who did not know Joseph, and begins to cruelly oppress the Israelites. Exodus 1:8-14. However, in Jubilees, this era of enslavement is not merely a historical occurrence. It is explicitly presented as an integral part of a cosmic prophecy that had already been meticulously inscribed on the heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, God had already foretold the bondage of Israel long before it ever came to pass, and it was a strategic component of his divine plan to guide them towards the monumental Exodus and the subsequent giving of the Mosaic Law. This prophetic blueprint directly connects to Joseph's initial role in bringing Israel to Egypt. While Joseph's actions initially saved Israel from famine, their time in Egypt was predestined to culminate in enslavement, which would ultimately serve to powerfully demonstrate God's sovereign power in delivering his chosen people. Jubilees 48-1 declares, "And it was written on the heavenly tablets that they would be oppressed in Egypt, and that God would bring them out with great power and wonders, so that his name would be glorified." This perspective transforms Israel's period in Egypt from a simple historical event into a profound spiritual narrative, where their enslavement and eventual exodus were preordained for God's ultimate glory. The suffering endured by the Israelites is framed as a necessary trial, designed to prepare them to receive the sacred laws given at Mount Sinai. In Exodus, we witness God directly bringing about the plagues and miraculously delivering Israel from Pharaoh's oppressive rule. Exodus 7-12. However, Jubilees adds a profound layer of spiritual warfare to this dramatic story, introducing angels as pivotal players in the cosmic conflict between God and Pharaoh. According to Jubilees, the cruel oppression of Israel was not merely a political struggle but an intense spiritual battle between the forces of good and evil. Mastema, a figure frequently associated with Satan, is actively portrayed as working to harden Pharaoh's heart and intensify Israel's suffering. Mastema and his malevolent spirits are said to have encouraged the Egyptians to oppress Israel even more harshly, thereby testing their faithfulness to God. Jubilees 48-9 states, "And the prince of the Mastema stood against them, and he sought to destroy them with hard bondage and to cause them to forsake their faith in the Lord." In this way, Jubilees adds a cosmic dimension to the narrative of Israel's enslavement, powerfully illustrating that it wasn't just a matter of political power. Profound spiritual forces were actively at work, desperately trying to undermine God's divine plan for Israel's deliverance. The plagues of Egypt are thus presented not only as acts of divine judgment, but also as crucial stages in a larger cosmic battle, with Mastema striving to prevent Israel's exodus. In Jubilees, the heavenly tablets play an absolutely central role in explaining how the laws and the precise timing of the exodus were intricately woven into God's eternal plan. According to Jubilees, the exodus wasn't merely a reaction to Israel's suffering. It had been meticulously timed and preordained according to the divine calendar inscribed on the heavenly tablets. The book powerfully emphasizes that the timing of the Exodus was directly connected to the observance of sacred laws, and that Israel's deliverance was intended to bring them into perfect alignment with the divine order. Jubilees clarifies that Israel's duration in Egypt, their period of suffering, and the exact moment of their deliverance were all predetermined, and God's actions were in perfect harmony with this cosmic timeline. Jubilees 49-1 reveals, "And it was written on the heavenly tablets that on the 14th day of the first month, at the appointed time, God would bring Israel out of Egypt, for this was the day set apart from the beginning of creation." This specific detail is unique to Jubilees. While Exodus focuses on the immediate events leading up to and during the plagues, Jubilees introduces the profound idea that the timing of the Exodus was part of a predetermined calendar, directly tied to the cosmic laws of the universe. This perspective elevates the Exodus beyond just a historical event, making it an intrinsic part of the spiritual fabric of creation itself. The 10 plagues in Exodus, Exodus 7-12, are presented as a dramatic and undeniable display of God's power, sent to compel Pharaoh to release the Israelites. In Jubilees, however, these plagues are imbued with even greater cosmic significance. They are not merely divine punishments but also profoundly symbolic acts that represent the complete defeat of Egypt's false gods and the insidious spiritual forces that stood behind them. Jubilees explains that each individual plague was specifically aimed at disempowering the myriad false deities of Egypt, unequivocally demonstrating that only the God of Israel possessed true, ultimate power over both heaven and earth. Each plague, therefore, was a direct strike not only against Pharaoh and his physical dominion, but also against the spiritual rulers of Egypt, systematically undermining the forces of darkness that sought to perpetually keep Israel enslaved. Jubilees 48-11 states, "And the Lord sent the plagues upon Egypt, not only to judge Pharaoh, but to show that the gods of Egypt were nothing before him, for they were false, powers unable to stand before the Almighty." In this view, the plagues become an integral part of the larger cosmic conflict between good and evil, where the God of Israel comprehensively defeats both the physical and spiritual powers of Egypt. Jubilees also subtly suggest that Mastema and his malevolent forces were actively working behind the scenes to dissuade Pharaoh from releasing Israel, but God's overwhelming power consistently thwarted them at every turn. In Exodus, we see Moses receiving the law directly from God on Mount Sinai. But Jubilees adds the crucial detail that these laws were not newly created at that specific moment. They were, in fact, already meticulously inscribed on the heavenly tablets long before Moses' time. According to Jubilees, the heavenly tablets are essentially a cosmic, eternal record of all of God's laws, established at the very dawn of creation, and serving as an infallible guide for both angels and humans. Jubilees emphasizes that Moses was simply the human recipient, the chosen vessel for laws that had been preordained for all time. The Mosaic Law, therefore, is presented not merely as a set of rules exclusively for the Israelites. It is an intrinsic part of a divine order that governs the entire universe. This implies that the laws given to Moses were always intended to be revealed, and their timing was in perfect accordance with the precise divine calendar. Jubilees 6:17 proclaims, "And the law and the testimony were ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, created even before the foundation of the world, so that they might guide all the generations of the children of Israel." While Exodus focuses on the dramatic revelation of the law at Sinai, Jubilees presents it as an integral component of a grand cosmic plan. These laws were already meticulously written in heaven, patiently awaiting the precise moment to be revealed to Moses and the Israelites. One of the most captivating aspects of Jubilees is its powerful insistence that the Mosaic Law, or at least significant portions of it, was observed long before Moses even existed. While the traditional Bible portrays Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as righteous individuals, it doesn't explicitly state that they were given the full law. Jubilees, on the other hand, confidently claims that the patriarchs were already diligently observing the Sabbath, meticulously performing sacrifices, and faithfully following many of the laws that would later be formally given to Moses. This radical perspective transforms the Mosaic Law from a new development into a profound restoration of ancient laws that had been passed down from the very beginning of time. The patriarchs, it explains, received these commandments through divine revelation and through the direct guidance of the angels who ministered to them. For instance, Abraham is specifically described as rigorously following the Sabbath and the dietary laws long before they were officially given to Israel. Jubilees 16:28 states, "For Abraham kept the Sabbath, circumcised his sons, and followed the commandments of the Lord that were written on the heavenly tablets, and the law was revealed to him through the angels of God." In this way, Jubilees presents the law as a timeless, eternal code, divinely given to all the righteous from Adam onward. Moses was simply the chosen individual, tasked with delivering it in its complete and formalized form to the nation of Israel. One of the most unique contributions of Jubilees to the narrative of the Mosaic Law is its profound emphasis on the cosmic calendar. In Jubilees, the diligent observance of time, particularly the Sabbath, the various festivals, and the pivotal Jubilee years, is absolutely central to the divine order. These intricate laws of timekeeping are presented as intrinsically part of the heavenly tablets, and faithfully following them is viewed as a profound way of aligning oneself with the divine rhythm of the universe. Jubilees explicitly emphasizes the solar calendar over the lunar calendar, with a year consistently consisting of 364 days. This precise system is regarded as the unequivocally correct method to observe God's commandments, meticulously ensuring that all festivals and Sabbaths consistently fall on their proper, appointed days. Jubilees issues a solemn warning that deviating from this divine calendar can inevitably lead to spiritual disorder, which is precisely why the laws of timekeeping hold such a central and critical position within the Mosaic Law. Jubilees 52 states, "And the Lord spoke to Moses and said, Write down for Israel the law of the Sabbath and the festivals, for these times are ordained on the heavenly tablets, and you must observe them exactly lest you fall into error." This intense focus on the cosmic calendar is not as prominently highlighted in the traditional Bible, where the Sabbath and festivals are mentioned, but without the same profound emphasis on their cosmic origins. Jubilees strongly stresses that adhering to this calendar is paramount to remaining in God's favor, as it meticulously aligns human life with the precise divine plan. While the Mosaic Law in the traditional Bible is given specifically to the Israelites, Jubilees presents these laws as eternally binding, not only for Israel, but for all generations, and even for the angels themselves. The Book of Jubilees profoundly emphasizes that the laws inscribed on the heavenly tablets are not mere temporary guidelines for a single nation. They are eternal commandments that govern both heaven and earth. In Jubilees, the laws given to Moses are intended for observance by all of God's creation, including the angels, who are depicted as diligently keeping the Sabbath and faithfully observing God's festivals in heaven. This perspective expands the Mosaic Law to become an integral part of the universal order, extending beyond mere humanity and seamlessly connecting the spiritual realm to the physical realm. Jubilees 50-13 states, "And the law that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai is eternal, and will be observed in heaven and on earth. The angels keep the Sabbath, and the righteous will observe the commandments forever." This profound idea of the eternal law is not as explicitly stated in the traditional Bible, where the focus primarily rests on the covenant between God and Israel. In Jubilees, however, the law is portrayed as part of the very fabric of the universe, binding both angels and humans to God's magnificent cosmic order. In Jubilees, the future of Israel is not left to mere chance or arbitrary circumstance. It is meticulously woven into a divinely ordained timeline that has been intricately written on the heavenly tablets since the very beginning of time. This grand timeline meticulously outlines the rise and fall of nations, the exile and eventual return of Israel, and the ultimate judgment that will come upon the world. Everything that transpires in human history, from the initial act of creation to the final climactic judgment, diligently follows the precise cosmic schedule that is meticulously recorded in heaven. One of the truly unique features of Jubilees is its unwavering insistence that these events are entirely preordained and that absolutely nothing happens outside of God's perfect divine plan. The book provides a sweeping prophetic overview of Israel's complex journey, clearly explaining that their exile, periods of suffering, and ultimate restoration were all meticulously inscribed in the heavenly records and are destined to unfold precisely according to the divine calendar. Jubilees 23:32 proclaims, "And all that will come upon Israel was written on the heavenly tablets from their rebellion to their redemption, and the times appointed for their deliverance were fixed long ago." While Genesis and Exodus concentrate on specific, impactful events in Israel's early history, Jubilees offers a much broader, cosmic view, powerfully demonstrating that Israel's destiny is an integral part of a larger cosmic plan that has already been meticulously determined. Jubilees places a strong, consistent emphasis on the pivotal role of angels throughout Israel's long and intricate history, but their involvement becomes even more profoundly critical as the end times draw near. In Jubilees, the angels of the Lord are not merely messengers. They are the divinely appointed executors of God's judgment upon the nations, diligently ensuring that His divine will is perfectly carried out, both in heaven and on earth. As the end of days approaches, Jubilees describes how angels will descend to meticulously separate the righteous from the wicked, meticulously gathering those who have remained unwaveringly faithful to God's commandments. The Book of Jubilees also introduces the compelling idea that Mastema, the malevolent leader of the evil spirits, will ultimately be bound and cast into the abyss, profoundly symbolizing the ultimate and conclusive defeat of the forces of darkness. Jubilees 23:29 declares, "And the Lord will send His angels to gather His chosen, and they shall bind the prince of the evil spirits, casting him into the abyss, until the time of judgment, when he shall be destroyed forever." This powerful portrayal of angels as direct agents of divine justice adds a truly unique layer to the end times prophecy. While the traditional Bible speaks of angels in the context of judgment, cf. Revelation, Jubilees presents an even more detailed and vivid vision of their active role in the profound spiritual warfare that will unfold in the last days. One of the central and most comforting themes in Jubilees is the prophetic vision of Israel's ultimate redemption. The book powerfully emphasizes that despite Israel's periods of rebellion and subsequent exile, God has already definitively determined a precise time when they will be gloriously restored to their land and profoundly renewed in their covenant with Him. This restoration is not merely a political event. It is a deep spiritual renewal that perfectly aligns with the cosmic plan meticulously inscribed in the heavenly tablets. According to Jubilees, the redemption of Israel will occur after a period of intense tribulation, during which the nation will be purified, the law will be re-established in its fullness, and the people will once again walk in profound holiness, thereby preparing them for the coming of the Messiah and the glorious establishment of God's kingdom on earth. Jubilees 23:26 states, "And the time will come when the children of Israel will turn back to the Lord with all their heart, and He will gather them from the nations and establish them in their land as it was written on the heavenly tablets." While the traditional Bible also speaks of Israel's restoration, cf. blank, Isaiah and Jeremiah, Jubilees adds the crucial detail that this restoration is part of a predetermined timeline, with specific events already meticulously recorded in the heavenly records. In the end times, Jubilees vividly describes the glorious advent of a messianic kingdom, where God's chosen ruler, often interpreted as the Messiah, will establish perfect righteousness on earth. The Book of Jubilees powerfully emphasizes that this kingdom will signify the culmination of the current age and the triumphant dawn of God's eternal rule, where the law will be perfectly upheld and the righteous will inherit the earth. The final judgment in Jubilees involves the absolute separation of the righteous from the wicked, with the wicked being definitively cast into the lake of fire, where they will be eternally destroyed. Mastema and his evil spirits will be utterly defeated, and the Messiah will rule in perfect peace and justice. This profound vision of the end times is consistent with the apocalyptic imagery found in the Book of Revelation, but Jubilees adds even greater emphasis on the paramount role of the law and the ultimate restoration of the cosmic order. Jubilees 50-13 declares, "And the Lord will establish His kingdom on earth, and the righteous shall rule with Him. For the law shall be written on their hearts, and the wicked shall be cast into the lake of fire." This messianic kingdom in Jubilees reflects a vision of a fully restored creation, where the law is perfectly observed and the righteous are bountifully rewarded for their unwavering faithfulness. The final judgment brings about the ultimate and complete defeat of evil, ushering in an era of everlasting peace. If you found value in this deep dive into the Book of Jubilees and its unique cosmic vision of biblical history, please consider sharing this video with others who might be interested in exploring these profound mysteries. By sharing, you empower us to continue uncovering ancient texts and revealing the hidden layers of God's eternal plan. Don't forget to like, subscribe to Deep Bible Stories, and join the conversation in the comments below. Together, we can delve even deeper into these fascinating biblical insights.